like truth is the driftwood that we have to clutch onto right now, or else we'll all drown. You know, the sliding of standards when it comes to untruths and disinformation, and it really matters.
Well, I was going to start by saying, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, so many strings to your bow. I mean, people ask me sometimes, what do you do? And it's very hard to like kind of summarize it. And obviously you do podcasts, you write, well, your main thing is writing, but screenwriting as well, and podcasts, and journalist, could argue as well. But I mean, how do you define yourself?
I think I call myself a non-fiction writer. Journalist kind of gives the wrong impression.
It does,
like I'm some sort of, you know, gumshoe trouble. Which I guess I kind of am, but I prefer non-fiction. I like non-fiction writer. I don't really think of screenwriting. Like I've been incredibly lucky to have written a couple of screenplays that got made, but on each of those occasions I was collaborating with a proper screenwriter, Peter Strawn on Frank and Bong Joon-ho on Okja. And so I don't see myself as a screenwriter. I see myself as somebody who luckily hooked up with two great screenwriters. But the other stuff, basically it's writing non-fiction adventure stories, kind of, and doing the same thing in audio with podcasts. But not this kind of podcast, not a conversation, something much more, you know, edited and structured and...
You're a storyteller.
Yeah, I am. I'm a storyteller. It's funny, in the old days, storyteller had such a terrible connotation. It was like some kind of, I don't know, I'm about to be really pejorative, but some kind of Norfolk.
Weaving tales.
Weaving tales.
Around the fireside.
Drinking
mead.
Liquid, opium or whatever. And, telling stories about the ancient times.
It's like Middle Earth type situation.
But now, I am. I'm a storyteller. I'm glad that word doesn't have those connotations anymore.
No, I think it's quite a trendy word at the moment. I see lots of people saying that they're storytellers, creators.
I think it's so, even on social media, we're creating content. You're having to tell a story all the time. Right.
Well, I mean, that's very true. But with me, I literally can only tell stories. Like, I can't sit at home. Sometimes, well, actually, I don't. But, you know, there's some writers who are very good at sitting at home and having big thoughts and writing books without leaving their homes at all. I mean, that's what novelists do. But I just can't do that. The only way I can write is to go off and have, you know, get out of my depth, have adventures, go on strange journeys, meet people. I can't do it any other way, really.
It's that kind of Gonzo style, I guess. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I'm always a little resistant to the word Gonzo because for me, Gonzo means something very specific. It's basically Hunter S. Thompson.
It's hedonistic, isn't it?
Taking a load of LSD and then infiltrating a police convention. And I don't do that.
No.
But you know, there are, I think, Gonzo elements to what I do. Around the same time that Hunter S. Thompson started, Tom Wolfe wrote this book called The New Journalism, and it was a collection of first-person non-fiction narrative people. I think probably Hunter S. Thompson was in there, but so was people like Joe Esterhaus and George Plimpton. This is completely from memory, and I might have got it completely wrong. But basically, that feels more like what I do. You know, it's definitely first-person. You know, it's my journey. It's filtered through my experience. But there's many ways of doing that, you know, not just the kind of Hunter Thompson thing. There's many different tones and styles to it.
Well, I think that's what makes your stuff so not just readable, but relatable as well, because you're going on that journey with you. And it's a very sort of empathetic story. You know, it's not just sort of like looking at things and people and situations under a microscope like you're a scientist. You're coming at it from a very human perspective.
I think so. Whereas someone like Hunter Thompson was more of a sort of troublemaker. Like the comedy of his stuff is that he would cause chaos. And I'm not saying I haven't ever caused chaos. I have sometimes, but it's not my foremost.
Yeah, in a very polite way.
Yeah.
Very polite chaos maker.
Yes. Yeah. I suppose one of the most gonzo things I did was when I first started my career, I snuck into this secret club called Bohemian Grove with Alex Jones, the conspiracy theorist. And we sort of, snuck in through the bushes and witnessed this weird ceremony where world leaders have a mock human sacrifice. And that was very Gonzo. You can imagine Hunter S. Thompson doing that. So I have done that kind of thing. Yes.
Wow. Can you, just on Alex Jones, can you believe where he's got to now?
I couldn't believe it. Like the first time I lost touch with him for several years. I moved on to other things. And then I was at the gym. This was probably 2015. I was on the elliptical and Trump was on, just starting his campaign. And I put on my headphones. I mean, at that moment, everybody was so fascinated by Trump.
Yeah.
And I remember at that time, I remember this happening, but also it became a famous story that the networks, Hillary Clinton was giving a speech, but instead of carrying the speech, the networks were showing the empty podium from which Trump would soon speak. That's how obsessed people were with Trump. And yeah, when I saw that, I thought he's going to win. And I tweeted it and everybody was like, don't be ridiculous. He's not going to get the nomination. And then to my regret, all of these experts were saying, don't worry, there's no way Trump's going to win. But I sort of went back on my instinct, and I've always regretted that. Because nobody in 2016 thought Trump was going to win, and I did. Anyway, Alex, so I was at the gym, and Trump was on, and I put on my headphones, and literally as I put on my headphones, somebody shouted out a question to Trump, and it was, are you going to go back on the Alex Jones show? And Trump said, Alex Jones, good guy. And I almost fell off the elliptical. I thought of all the people that I've interviewed.
Oh, no.
If you'd said to me, like, which one of the people that you've chronicled over the years would you wish to have the ear of the president? I wouldn't have said Alex Jones.
That's terrifying.
But it is fascinating how a lot of these individuals, David Icke as well, someone that you've had dealings with, have become mainstream.
It's... I mean, it's bewildering. It's kind of upsetting. I'm just finishing season 2 of Things Fell Apart, and at the end, I give a little sort of emotional speech about the importance of truth. Like, truth is the driftwood that we have to clutch onto right now, or else we'll all drown. The sliding of standards when it comes to untruths and disinformation. And it really matters. Truth really matters. And I find it kind of personally upsetting and bewildering that... And there's lots of different ways of lying, by the way. It's not just, crazy conspiracy theories. There's ideological journalism on the left, which is another way of lying. True crime podcasting is another way of lying. You take a little slither of information and you run with it. So there's lots, so I'm not like blaming the right. You see untruths everywhere.
Well, I think conspiracy theorists, actually one of their things, you might disagree, but it seems like one of their things is that they're the holders of the truth. And they're so angry that no one else can see it. And it's like, open your eyes, this is so important. They think that is the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've just been reading Naomi Klein's book, Doppelganger, which is very much in my wheelhouse. I try not to read things that are too much in my wheelhouse because I can't relax.
Yeah.
So instead I've switched to Barbara Streisand's autobiography. But before I stopped reading Naomi Klein, there was a line which stuck with me where she said, when we deplatform people, they don't vanish. They go to another world, like a kind of mirror world, where they're even more popular.
Yeah.
One of the most shocking things that came out of Alex Jones's trial, he was sued by the parents of kids killed at Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
And one of the most extraordinary facts that came from this, so crazy I can barely believe it, is that after he was deplatformed, like shut out of YouTube everywhere, he made more money.
Yeah.
He became richer after being deplatformed. So when people say to me, over the years, people have said to me quite a lot, do you feel bad about platforming people like Alex Jones? I think a good answer I can give now is that, well, deplatforming doesn't work.
No, in some ways it's quite cult-like, isn't it? How they develop almost more power, because then people are, well, the fact that they've been taken off social media and cancelled, so to speak, must mean they're telling the truth, and people want to stop them.
Stifle the message.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, other people who also feel bruised by mainstream society then, gravitate towards them. And it's like what's that world in Stranger Things where everything's
the upside down.
The upside down. Yeah, they're all living in the upside down world where they're Naomi Wolf, apparently, according to Naomi Klein's book, has more followers now. She's more successful since she went to the other side.
The dark side.
Well, it is. It does feel like that.
It does. And as I say, I'll say again, like, I do not point the finger at the right any more than I do. I've been burned by overly ideological left-wing people who've wanted me to kind of influence my storytelling. And that's just as bad. Truth is truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say to you, like, how sometimes it feels hard to find the nuance we live in such a binary world now. And obviously that's something that you are always trying to seek out, it feels like, anyway.
I think so. Nuance. Because that's another lie, the Twitter lie of everybody being either a magnificent hero or a sickening villain. And it's true that there's some people out there who are psychopaths and all they can do is spread malevolence. I'm sure there are some people out there who are magnificent heroes and all they do is heroic things all the time. But the fact is, most people are neither one of those things. Most people are a mess. And so that's another truth, is like, don't turn people into this, caricature of the best thing about them or the worst thing about them. Yeah,
it's true. We tend to idolise people and put them up on a platform and sort of like celebrate them like they're like a god almost.
Well, that's where it's even more juicy when we can take them down, though, isn't it?
Right, yeah, exactly. Well, it leads to stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it leads to just everybody being used to, we're so conditioned to now define ourselves as being in opposition to other people. And it means when something truly complicated like Israel-Gaza comes along, people can't see it in a complicated way. They're on one side or they're on the other side.
Yeah. And or if you say something that's sort of like more on one side, everyone's like, well, that means you're anti this, or you're completely against the other side.
Yeah. I've had people ask me to sign petitions from both sides, pro-Israel and pro-Gaza, and I haven't done it, and that's the reason. Like, the pro-Israel one leaves out a lot of stuff, and the pro-Gaza one leaves out a lot of stuff. So I just, unless there's and even then I wouldn't want to sign something, even if it was completely reflected how I feel, because what's the point? Like, some platitude from me, like, how's that it's not going to change any, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's, I don't know. That's how I thought about it.
So tackling the culture wars, which obviously is something you do in Things Fall Apart.
Things Fell Apart.
Sorry.
It comes from the Yeats poem.
Things Fell Apart.
Yeah, the Yeats poem. It's something about it. I almost like cry when I recite this poem, because it's such a powerful. I can't remember the whole thing, but it starts off with a falcon. It was written in 1919, so during a pandemic. It was written during the Spanish flu. Yeah, and it begins with a falcon is lost in the air. It can't find the falconer. And then it says, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. This next line, I'm always a little, because it's a bit pejorative, but the next line is, the best lack all conviction, while the worst are filled with passionate intensity. And then the poem ends with the devil being born. And the last line is about the devil slouching towards Bethlehem to be born. And the Joan Didion book, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, comes from that poem. So when I was making Things Fell Apart, I just remembered that poem and it seemed right. But because it was because season one of Things Fell Apart was a history story about origin stories from the past. I changed it from Things Fall Apart to Things Fell Apart.
Okay.
That's probably too long an explanation.
No, it's a great one. It's a great one.
That's
Okay.
good.
So Things Fell Apart. Yeah. So diving into the culture wars, which is obviously we've touched on already. Like it's a fiery place to maybe dive into, but obviously you're looking at it from an origin story kind of place, whereas a lot of people don't know a lot about how these things actually began.
Yeah, and the stories are incredible. I mean, the best thing about the show is just how incredible the stories are. You know, ferreting out these unknown stories, and we're just finishing season 2 now, and I think it's the same thing. There's just some incredible stories in there that are going to blow people's minds, like something that began all the way over there ends here. You would never think, you know, the path from one to the other.
Yeah, stuff like, you know, someone who wants to start making a film and then suddenly there's a whole culture war over abortion.
Yeah.
It's like
All
two
because
completely
this
unrelated
kid-
things.
Yeah. This kid wants to make Hollywood films, manages to convince his father, who's a prominent Christian art historian, to let him direct a documentary for him because he wants a show reel. Anyway, for Hollywood producers. And his images are so arresting, he single-handedly convinces Christian evangelists to be against abortion. And then a bunch of people who watched the film, Frank's film, would have murdered abortion doctors. And Frank just wanted a show reel
Yeah.
to show producers.
Well, it sort of highlights the importance of understanding where your beliefs actually stem from. Because often you attach a belief to something, or people I think often are guilty of attaching a belief to something just because they hear it and they think, yeah, that sounds about right, but without actually doing really any research into where that came from.
Yeah.
And does it come from truth, or does it come from some kind of weird...
Yeah, some weird person with a power complex or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, and there's a line in season 2 of Things Fell Apart. It's kind of obvious in a way, but it kind of touched me, where one of my interviewees says that America is a class-based society that pretends it's an identity-based society. And I think that's true. And I think, you know, what that really means is that, you know, everybody's yelling at each other over, you know, their identity while the rich get richer. Bread and circuses, right? You know, we're being manipulated by high-up people, making us mad. Elon Musk, making us all crazy in the hope that we'll, you know, stay longer on the site so he'll make more money.
Yeah.
We're all being manipulated by... this is my conspiracy theory. We're being manipulated by these powerful tech, you know, gurus and so on. And why? You know, given that America is a class-based society that pretends to be an identity-based society, why are so few people... Why is that an unpopular thing to say? I don't get it.
Well, because it rocks people's identities, well, especially Americans. I mean, it's easy for us to say in England, but I think if you said that to an American, often people do attach their beliefs and their values to their identity. So if you try and shift that in any way, it's not just attacking their beliefs, it's attacking them as a person, right?
Yes. It'd be interesting to see, you know, Ron DeSantis was going to be like the identity, the culture war candidate, and his, you know, campaign for president is totally crashing and burning. And I would probably think that abortion is still a big issue in America, but I think stuff like, you know, the whole war between gender critical feminists and trans activists, I don't think that's going to factor at all into the American election as much as people like Ron DeSantis want it to. Because I think actually most people outside of the bubble of social media, most people care about economics, they care about class.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think going back to what you were saying about Trump, when you were saying you thought that he was going to get elected, but it feels like there is a difference between what people are seeing on social media and the truth of it, because there's a whole demographic of people that aren't sharing their thoughts and feelings on social media, and we're in the echo chamber of people that are on Twitter being like, no, I don't think he'd be he'd be elected. That's ridiculous. But actually, there's lots of people out there with very different views.
Lots of dissatisfied people.
Yeah, totally. And I have no idea. I have no idea what's going to happen with Trump next time around. I was pretty confident he'd win first time around. Second time around, I really don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with whether or not he's standing against Biden or someone else. I think if he's standing against Biden, he might win. Simply not because I think Biden's doing a bad job. I don't. I think Biden's been doing, by and large, a good job. But Biden's just so old.
Yeah.
And that's frightening people.
Well, it's frightening to think that when Trump said many years ago that he could go out and shoot someone in the street and he'd still get voted.
Yeah, he's right.
He's actually right.
Yeah.
No one predicted that to be a thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to be curious, I mean, I'm very curious to know what's going to happen. We're only a year away from the election, and I think the jury is massively out. Like anything could happen.
It's interesting you're saying about like Ron DeSantis and the sort of things that maybe some politicians are trying to stoke, and we're seeing it here as well in the UK with the former Home Secretary now, stoking these culture wars, I guess, stoking these conversations. Do you think, by and large, though, most people are a little kind of weary of, a bit maybe war weary of like kind of some of these things?
Yes, I think so. I think obviously culture wars always mutate, and right now Israel-Gaza has become a culture war, bafflingly, to be honest. So it's not like they go away, but I'd say that some of the ones that have burnt the hottest are now burning out. The gender critical stuff, I think, is burning out. I think people are just sick of that. So yeah, there is a weariness. Season 2 of Things Fell Apart is going to be my last, foray into the culture wars.
Have you found it exhausting at all, or has it been quite interesting and
Well, no,
inspiring?
I love finding incredible stories. It's funny. I said to somebody the other day, most of my projects on the surface sound like something that people aren't going to want to read or listen to. The only exception to that is the Psychopath test, because it turns out that if you put the word psychopath in the title, people want to buy the book.
Good tip.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably lots of people that want to know if they're a psychopath.
Yes, yeah, totally. I didn't anticipate that, actually.
Yeah.
Because I am so sure that I am not a psychopath that I didn't anticipate that the number of people over the last 15 years since that book came out, 15 years since I started writing it, who've said that they were reading the book thinking, oh my God, am I a psychopath? Yeah. And then they always say that the part of the book, there's a line in the book where I say, if you're worried, if you're reading this and worried that you might be a psychopath, that means you aren't one.
Yeah.
Because psychopaths never worry about being what's there to worry about. It's like, it's a great, being a psychopath must feel fantastic. No guilt.
You just don't care.
Yeah. Exactly.
Must be lovely.
Yeah. But the culture wars is one of those topics where I think people kind of have to trust me to want to listen to Things Fell Apart, because it's really good and season 2 is really good. But the subject matter may put people off. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's been the way my entire career. The Men Hysteric Goats, nobody wanted to read the Men Hysteric Goats. Like, who wants to read a book about the US military trying to train people to kill goats just by staring at them? And then how those ideas have mutated into the war on terror. Like, I wouldn't want to read that.
I love reading it, but
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like unfortunately, I gravitate towards stories that I have to convince people are actually a lot more fun than they seem on the surface.
It's more gratifying, I think, those jobs where on paper it sounds weird, but actually I think that's the definition of genius, isn't it?
Well, one would hope. Yes. But Yeah, no, it's true. It's like, so you've been publicly shamed as well. There was so much opposition. Yeah, but so much opposition.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Especially when I started writing that book. Nobody wants to read anything about the internet. The internet's boring. What people do on their computers doesn't impact the real world. This is what people were saying to me back in like 2012, 2013, when I started work on that book.
But that's all the more reason to write it, surely, because if people genuinely think that, like, oh, the internet isn't affecting people's real lives, surely you have to tell the story. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I'm stubborn enough that I don't listen to. You know, when I first wrote my book, I remember I met a producer at a party, and he said, "So what are you working on?" I said, "Oh, well, all these conspiracy theorists believe that there's a secret room, like a shadowy cabal inside a secret room, and this shadowy cabal is secretly ruling the world. So what I'm doing in this book, I'm writing this book called Them, and I'm hooking up with the conspiracy theorists, and together we're going to like find the secret room, and we're going to climb up the drain pipes and get in and confront the secret rulers of the world going about their covert wickedness." And he just looked at me and he said, really kind of disgusted, and he said, but it's not true, there isn't a secret room. And I often thought about that, because I thought if I'd listened to him and been put off, I wouldn't have written that book. And it's such a good I'm so proud of that book. So you've got to be stubborn if you know that you're onto a story, if you have that instinct.
I was going to say, do you work a lot on your gut instinct and your intuition?
Yeah, it's all I've got. Like if something is, if I find a story that I want to tell, I will tell it by hook or by crook, because it doesn't come along every day. You know, so I can go for a year without finding a story that I want to tell. So, you know, I've had the odd bleak year where I've just been flailing. So yes, I'm not going to let anybody. Plus, you know, for 35 years, people have said to me, "No, that's a shit idea, don't do it." And I've had a good career.
Yeah.
And people have always liked the things that people told me not to do.
I was going to say, at what point does your reputation just carry you? And then eventually people are like, it sounds bad, but it is you, so it's probably going to be really amazing.
You know what? Things are starting to change. There is more trust now.
Good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Good. Well, you deserve it.
Well, thank you.
It should have been a lot earlier.
Yeah, it really did take, I mean, honestly, right up until, say, you've been publicly shared. Well, beyond it, really. Actually, this podcast I made called The Butterfly Effect, which is about the what happened when tech utopians took over the porn industry. And I made The Butterfly Effect is about the ripples of that decision. And then people were very hostile. You don't want to do you don't want to touch porn, don't do anything that's got anything to do with the porn world.
Wow.
And that was a hit. That went to like number one in the audiobook charts. So I think that was the final we'll trust Jon.
I'm on something.
Yeah. Or other people. Like, you know, other people just trusting that I know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Do you get much backlash from people with your work, or
less than you'd think? There's an Australian, a really brilliant Australian writer called Jon Safran, he's like an Australian Louis Theroux or me, and whenever he comes to New York, you know, because I live in New York now, we have lunch, and I saw him couple of months ago, and he said we don't get criticized much, do we? Like, you know, me, you, Louis, we don't get criticized much. And I'm like, no, like why is that? You know, and he was talking specifically about sort of doing stories about Nazis or whatever. He said, you know, everybody, if someone else does stories about Nazis, they get really criticized, but we don't. And Jon's theory is that we've been grandfathered in.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like, and in a way, we're like a useful weapon. So somebody could say, I hate, you know, that person's documentary about Nazis was so terrible. They, you know, but, you know, they should be more like Jon Safran, or they should be more like Louis Theroux, you know, whatever. So I think, you know, we luckily got this little bubble where we don't get quite the criticism that other people get.
I would say maybe that's because the way that you approach it is slightly different. You know, it feels more empathetic and more
curious,
compassionate, and
curious.
Exactly.
It's not judgmental, it's curious.
No, because you do get some people who, even if they try and mask it, you can tell the judgment's there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit distasteful sometimes. And
and performative. Like, what's the point? Like, to be honest, look, some people listening to this may disagree with what I'm about to say. And, maybe I'm wrong what I'm about to say. But, when I'm doing, I won't do Nazis unless there's another reason. Like, unless it's an amazing story that happens to take place in the world of white supremacists or whatever. I won't just do white supremacists for the sake of doing white supremacists. So that's important, that it's always got to be a more interesting, nuanced, strange, unexpected story. But also, it's like, we know that Nazis are bad, so why say it? Like, if you say it, it's for me, it's bad art to say the obvious.
Yes, yeah.
So that's like another reason why,
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, yes.
But that's the thing, you could never be judged on doing the obvious. It doesn't feel like you've ever done the obvious, really.
No, yeah. My earliest, I remember I did Nazis, my first Nazis.
I did Nazis.
Yeah. We've all done a Nazi story.
I did Nazis the other day, actually. What about you, Giles?
Well, my very first Nazi story was this politically correct faction of the Ku Klux Klan. Basically, a grand wizard of the Klan decided to make the Klan more likeable.
Oh, okay.
So he banned the robes, banned the hoods, banned the cross burnings, banned all the things that I think were presumably the most fun about being in the Ku Klux Klan.
The costumes.
Yeah, the costumes.
The pageantry.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I did that story, because there was a comedy. There's like an unexpected comedy to it. Yeah.
Why did he do that?
He just image makeover.
Like a commercialization.
Marketing, PR stunt.
Yeah, we don't hate black people, we just love white people. He came after David Duke, who was the first Klansman to try and be more mainstream. And this guy was called Tom Robb, and he took David Duke's position as like head of a particular faction of the Klan. And so he sort of carried it on and took it further.
Right.
But it really didn't work. Nobody wanted a nice Klan.
I want to know where you stand with those kind of organisations.
Yeah.
But it feels like there's, in the States now, there are lots of organisations that kind of circle around that particular kind of area. You've got things like, we saw it on January the 6th, and with things like the Proud Boys and stuff like that.
Yes. There's an interesting, without going into too much detail, when's this going out, by the way? This before 2024?
It will probably, I think it's going to be New Year. Is it New Year's Day or something?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I need to be a little circumspect about giving away too much of the plot. But actually, because season 2 of Things Fell Apart doesn't come out till January the 9th. But one of the stories actually looks at, not the Proud Boys, but looks at sort of accusations of white supremacy and sort of digs into that a little bit with some other groups. So I'm curious to see if I'll get into trouble for it. I feel like I work so hard that I sort of feel like I've got everything right by the time it goes out.
Yeah.
And I feel that way about this story too. But I'm looking into that very thing.
Yeah. Do you ever get a little fearful when you're going in deeper on those sort of things?
A little. You're always more worried if you do something that's sort of slightly critical of the left. When I'm slightly critical of the right, I don't care.
It feels easier somehow, doesn't it?
I remember Helen. This is a little unfair and it's a little broad, but I always remember Helen Lewis, the writer, saying, I think she wrote it, that when the right go after you, it's horrible, but it tends to last maybe 48 hours. When the left go after you, it can go on for years.
And you never give up.
Yeah, they're like elephants, so
We
just
know
don't
how
forget.
to hold a grudge.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when you release stuff, do you stay off social media or do you check it more?
I've got better. I mean, there's times I just remembered, like before the Psychopath test came out, I was, having panic attacks.
Oh, really?
Like, I don't want to make myself seem like I'm super calm or anything.
Don't worry, you're in good company with us.
Right.
Very anxious people.
Very anxious people.
Yeah. So you've been publicly shamed too. I was having panic attacks, like genuine sleepless nights and anxiety. And
well, I mean, the topic of that, and you were focusing on a lot of people who were hated, really, in the public. So it's always, if you're positioning yourself as on their side, so to speak.
Well, I don't know if my other readers felt this, but when I was reading that book, I was then going back and checking all my posts.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, what have I said in the past that's possible? Because I'm
That's
obviously you're seeing what can happen.
It's terrifying. Well, it's like Justine Sacco, is it? The tweet that went wrong.
Woman.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I think we can all empathise a little bit with, you know, when you've
misjudged
tweeted something or done something.
joke.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
Which
it's
wasn't
so
meant to
doable.
be offensive, by the way. She was
it's
trying
sort of
to
ironic,
be,
isn't
for
it?
people who don't know the tweet, this was the first great public shaming, the first, like the ground zero. She was flying to Cape Town and she tweeted, thinking she was doing like a South Park, making fun of her own privilege. It was going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white. And she became, by the time she landed, she turned on her phone after she landed and the first text kind of said it all. It was from somebody she hadn't spoken to since high school. And the text said, I am so sorry to see what's happening to you right now.
Oh my God. Everyone's worst nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah. But that fear. I do think the thing I'm most proud of, being publicly shamed, is, I had those fears too. Like, is there anything in my past? Is there anything that I could be got for? Is there, there's that Jimmy Carr line about how, he said something along the lines of, the joke that will destroy my career is already out there somewhere.
Yeah.
And that fear, that real palpable terror.
Oh, it's so true, actually. Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to make people feel when they read So You've Been Publicly Shamed. Like, I wanted it to be like a visceral experience, like the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, the terror.
It felt like that, to be honest. I was very
In fact, I was going to call it The Terror at one point.
Oh,
and
really?
In fact, one of the chapters is called The Terror.
Oh, do you know what, though? I feel so bad for people that are teenagers living in this online world now. Because when I think about what I was like as a teenager, I would have been cancelled like that, just saying stupid stuff for a laugh. Like, that's what teenagers do, isn't it?
Totally.
Without using their brains. But, just to have everything out there on a public forum for people to read.
Well, I think we forget it's a public forum.
Yeah, exactly. You do forget. And, I got a lot of criticism for, defending Justine Sacco.
Really?
But this is what I said to me. Somebody said to me, when you send a tweet, it's like standing in Times Square with a megaphone. And I was like, no, it's not. And especially not in 2013. Like, nothing like that had ever happened before. There was no logical reason why Justine Sacco would have thought that would happen while she was asleep on a plane.
No.
Yeah. I mean, if it had been a genuinely racist tweet, then that's one thing.
Yeah,
but
and I wouldn't have written about her if it had been a genuinely racist tweet.
Exactly. And I mean, then there's loads of other really interesting stories of other people as well in the book, which just filled me with terror.
Yeah.
Just thinking.
I'm glad. I very consciously wanted to fill people with terror.
Yeah.
Because I thought, on the internet, we forget there's consequences. And so I really, my primary goal writing that book was to make people feel what it feels like to be Justine Sacco, to be those people.
Well, I was talking to a friend of mine recently who's sort of in the public eye, and they were saying, the bigger our reputation grows, the more terrified we are of having some huge public shaming, to the point where they're almost like, maybe we need to like plan it. And then we'll have control over the fire kind of thing. Like, we'll fake it, we'll do something crazy. And we were talking about, and I think you mentioned this in the book, is when you do stuff all the time, like Trump, for example, terrible things all the time, to the point where you Google, it's just so much stuff that you can't even really pinpoint one or two things. Whereas if you've got this angelic, really great reputation, like you were saying earlier, people are either really good or really bad.
Yeah, that's where you're more likely to...
It's more dangerous.
Totally. Yeah, our shameworthiness. I always forget whether this is my quote or whether I was quoting somebody else in the book, but the line was that our shameworthiness lies in the space between who we are and how we present ourselves to the world. So if you present yourselves to the world... So Jonah Lehrer, for instance, in my book, was a pop science writer in the kind of Malcolm Gladwell mould. And he, committed some I mean, it's, you know, now you could say pretty minor infractions, sort of added some words to a Bob Dylan quote. I mean, stupid stuff, but not the level of misinformation that's swept the world since.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But the reason why he suffered, you know, so much for it was, you know, because he presented himself as this, you know, sort of professorial, pop science intellectual. And so he had a much bigger height to fall from. If you present the truth of yourself to somebody, the messy truth, you're less likely to be ruined.
Well, it's like going on a first date with someone, isn't it? You know, if you turn up as yourself and you look like shit and you're just like your authentic self, it's fine. If you present yourself as this amazing person and then the minute you stop being your actual authentic self, it's like, this isn't going to work.
Right, yes.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so interesting, isn't it?
We touched on it a bit earlier with like tech companies and stuff, but I guess like things like the Justin Sacco moments now, they're kind of rubbing their hands together in these moments, aren't they?
Oh, like, God, yeah. You know, Justine Sacco was Googled 40 times a month. That month, December 2013, she was Googled 1,220,000 times. And it was December 23rd. She was Googled that many times in the last 8 days of that month. Which means that Google, I actually got some internet economists to figure out how much money Google made. And it was a pretty wide spectrum, but the figure that they came up with was somewhere, you know, the night of the Justine Sacco incident, Google made somewhere between $120,000 and $468,000 on the back of her shaming. Whereas those of us doing the actual shaming got nothing. We were like unpaid shaming interns for Google.
Well, you get the prize of thinking that you're doing the right thing in the moment, which I know you speak about as well. When in the past,
well, we're very righteous, aren't we? In the moments?
We've all probably all done it.
Like our shit doesn't stink.
Yeah.
Well, that's specifically since reading your book as well. I'm very careful now to jump on those bandwagons because I think, do I know all the information? Is it going to come out later that it's all like a misunderstanding? And then there's tweets out there of me like with my pitchfork.
Right.
It's so scary.
Well, yeah. I mean, the one positive thing I'd say is that there's been so much shaming for the last 10 years. People are, you know, maybe starting to get a little bit sick of it. And a big public shaming maybe doesn't go as far now as just, unless it's something that's justified. I mean, obviously I'm talking about, you know, minor infractions like Justine Sacco's tweet. I'm not talking about major infractions like Russell Brand's, you know, I'm talking about. But in smaller situations like Justine Sacco, I don't think things will go as far now as 10 years ago.
Could you say also, like, obviously we haven't really touched on cancel culture, or the word cancel culture is like too broad almost for the things that it kind of, you know, glosses over. But I was just thinking, it's almost like some individuals want to be cancelled. Like it's almost like a coat of arms.
Yeah.
And then you can, like you say, you can profitise from it in some way, or, you know, you can get get on some slightly more right-wing news channels in this country if you're not.
Yeah, right. And all of that is comparatively new, and it's kind of our fault. You know, I equate it to like hospital superbugs, like like, you know, we shame and shame and shame so much that the bugs turn into superbugs. They're like impervious to treatment.
Yeah. If I use too much antibiotics now.
Right.
That's so true.
Yeah. So you're right. So this whole new thing of you know, the upside down world where you can now go. I mean, that's, you know, it's comparatively new and it's our fault. It wouldn't have happened if we'd been more compassionate and, you know, curious instead of judgmental, and forgiving and patient. And, you know, we create, you know, they're the monsters that we created. To an extent. I'm not, you know, to an extent. I mean, you know, there's certain, to an extent, not entirely.
Yeah.
Allegedly. John, I know this might go out before season 2 is out, but are there any little sneak peek tasters you can give us of what's to come in season 2? What can we expect?
Well, I've already given like a couple of tiny little things, but it's 8 stories.
Have you got a favourite?
I think they're all good this time around. There was one or two in season 1 that I liked a little bit less than the others. But I think they're all good. I'm really proud of the work that we've done. We've me and Sarah Sheppier, my producer, we worked really hard. Episodes 1 and 2 are like origin stories that are very similar to the ones in season 1. I'll tell you what I will do. I'll just tell you like one line from each of the, because I'm not going to tell you where they go.
Okay.
But episode 1 starts in Miami in the 80s with the mysterious deaths of 32 women.
Oh.
And, you know, one thing I really love about the show is that it takes ages, you know, for you to figure out how is that relevant to today.
I was going to say, should we try and guess what they are? No chance.
No, you'll never guess.
Yeah.
And episode 2 starts with a chance encounter at a yacht club between a bartender and a customer. And again, it takes ages. I mean, with both of those stories, you're probably 20 minutes in of a half an hour show before you get even an inkling of how it's relevant to today. Wow. And that's the thing I love most about Things Fell Apart, that the same thing happened with the abortion one. Like, you know, you're with this kid who's trying to become a Hollywood director, and you know, you're probably more than halfway through the show before you realise, oh my God, this is about the genesis of the anti-abortion movement.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's a bit like Memento. You're sort of working backwards a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. And I just love, I think, you know, the BBC allow me that kind of indulgence to you know, tell a story in that kind of slow way without signposting it too much. Like, I'll signpost a bit, but I don't think it's necessary to signpost massively.
No.
I trust that people will go with it. That's something I really do love about Radio 4 and the BBC. I've been listening to I used to always listen to the news to fall asleep, but since Israel and Gaza, I can't anymore. How can you sleep? So I've switched to Melvin Bragg's In Our Time, which
that's
is
a great show.
Yeah, it's the least stressful show. So I'm now learning everything about Tutankhamun and stuff. And again, it's like, this is what's so wonderful about the BBC, that you can put something like that out, and there's no impetus to make it, you know, current or, you know, trust. There's a lot of trust I think Radio 4 have with their listeners.
It's lovely to have that, I should imagine, as a creative, just to have that.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed working with the BBC on both season 1 and season 2 of Things Fell Apart. They're smart people. They give very few notes. I mean, although that's partly because I work so hard, and by the time they hear it, there isn't much call for notes.
Yeah. So, I mean, out of interest, how long does it take you to do like one episode, for example, with regards to like all the research and the interviews and everything?
I'd say roughly each episode, they're 30 minutes long, and I reckon each episode takes just over a month.
Right.
I mean, with books, it can be like 2 years. I mean, Psychopath, them was 5 years. But, you know, but this is a week's work, I'd say, that I take a month over. So I'd probably take like 4 times longer than, you know, just thinking about every split second. But actually more than a month. I'd say probably 6 weeks per episode.
Are you recording in the UK?
No, I record it all. This is the first time I've ever done a show remotely. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do it, because, you know, you can be on too many planes in your life. It can break you.
Yeah.
So I do the whole thing from my laundry room in my house in upstate New York.
Lovely. In the Catskills?
Yeah, well, just across the river from the Catskills. You
lovely.
can see the Catskills from our town.
Fancy.
Yeah. I just put a blanket over the washing machine so there isn't too much of an echo. And I just record the whole thing in the laundry room.
Amazing.
It's nice. You can have a cup of tea or whatever whenever you want.
Yeah.
Love it. I love working from home.
Yeah.
Well, Jon, thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a wonderful. We could talk for you for hours, but I know your time is precious. So
you're a busy
thank you
man.
so much for coming and talking to us.
It's my pleasure. I look forward to it coming out, and I hope people enjoy it. And it was very nice to talk to you both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.